Hey guys, welcome back to Range of Survival and Fieldcraft. I'm Andrew. Now what I have for you today is a video using a 5-piece minimalist survival kit and the skills associated with that kit. We're going to use 5 different pieces of kit that were either issued as part of survival training or were issued by the military as just common basic load items or items that we had available that we could pull from different resources such as medical aid bags or supply. But we're going to take these items and demonstrate specific skills and improvisational techniques out in the field. Let's go. Alright guys, welcome back. So let's take a look at that 5-piece kit. That first item we're going to look at is the survival knife, the center of our kit. Before ever going out to the field, though, we can modify our survival knife, especially this More Companion HD, by wrapping the sheath with 550 cord, securing that 550 with Ranger bands or rubber bands, and then we could even put a little bit of tape to secure those items onto the sheath just in case they slip off. But we can also add a belt loop on the back and even some paracord to create a necklace and carry this knife in the neck configuration. With our survival knife, the More Companion HD or Companion, even the Clipper, is a knife that's recommended for survival training or on packing lists for training and issued at schools sometimes. But we can take this knife, the Scandi Grind, easy to sharpen, very useful for carving and campcraft. We can also put a 90-degree edge on the spine to use to strike with our ferro rod. And we can also use this as a improvisational flint and steel kit with a sharp rock with the back of our blade to drive sparks onto fine tinder and ignite that tinder. For cordage, we have paracord. What can't you do with 550 cord? It's ubiquitous in the military, it's a common issue, but we can also take this cord, and one thing you might not know is that we can actually cut cord with cord using 550 like a saw. The ferro rod is our fire lighting device, issued as part of survival training and a requirement on the packing list, but a ferro rod is going to be the fire starting tool out in the bush. Thousands and thousands of strikes that we can use, and with a striker, using our 90-degree spine, we don't have to search for a striker or carry that extra equipment with us. The canteen and canteen cup, Old Faithful. It's been issued to soldiers for decades because it works. A simple bottle and nesting cup. We can transport water now safely or collect water, and we can purify that water over a fire inside that metal cup safely. We can also use the cup to produce things such as medicine or collect tinder or different resources, ignite tinder in the cup safely to start a fire. But this is a great piece of gear for a minimalist survival kit. For our 5th and final item, we're going to use what's called a casualty blanket. We don't call it a thermal blanket, and we don't call it a space blanket or mylar blanket or grabber blanket. In the military, this is called a casualty blanket, although the ones that are issued are going to be of lesser quality than this one. But the casualty blanket is just like that heavy-duty thermal blanket that we can use not only for shelter and keeping warm in an emergency, but we can also use as a reflector and then as a signal out in the field. Now for our first skill, we're going to do some land navigation. We're going to improvise a method to find cardinal directions. And with our minimal kit, we can do that. And what we're going to need is our survival knife. We just need to understand a few simple things. And that is, with a well-used knife like this one that I've had for about 10 years, it's been repeatedly sharpened using the same field sharpening kit. And that is with these diamond rod or diamond plate sharpening stones. These are metal, meaning that as we sharpen the knife, we are actually turning the tip of our knife into a magnet, because metal has free electrons, and as we sharpen against other pieces of metal, we are naturally going to force the electrons to one end of that other piece of metal, meaning that the electrons in the knife are actually going to move toward the tip of the knife based on the strokes of the knife as we sharpen. But we can sharpen our knives and simply test this in the field or test it on a piece of metal with the tip by trying to pick up our needle. We pick up that needle and we realize that we have a magnetic field at the tip of our knife. We can take the tip then and, using the same principles, stroke the needle with the tip of our knife to magnetize that needle to use in a free-floating form over water to actually determine north-south directions and find our cardinal directions using an improvisational method like this. So we just float it on a cork in the water and we determine north-south, check our work with a compass, and we're good to go. Close enough for government work. Now we could string up a shelter like this very easily to at least get out of the elements with our casualty blanket, especially if we have some cordage, or in this case bungee cords and stakes, to actually create the shelter very quickly. But there is another technique with this casualty blanket that we can use to get out of the elements, protect ourselves, and use a warming device to actually get warm very quickly in a cold environment to maintain thermal regulation and prevent hypothermia. Now, don't worry, we're just using a candle to demonstrate this type of shelter. We're actually going to use something else to warm up this shelter. The candle's a demonstration, so don't be fooled by the decoy. Stick around and wait for a minute, and you'll find out how we're actually going to heat this shelter using natural materials. Now, this is all fine, but we only have a 5-piece kit. So what if we only have those 5 items, and we don't have a candle as part of our kit? That's where we improvise. Now, if we don't have a candle and we just have our minimum kit, we're going to have to make do with the items around us. A way to recreate a candle to use as a warming device inside of our casualty blanket is with fat wood. Now, we can create a candle using fat wood by simply breaking off a piece of that fat wood, and we want something that is tapered in appearance. That way, when we light the tip, it will catch flame very easily and then continue to eat and grow in size as we use that as a candle underneath our emergency shelter. So we break off our piece into a nice tapered point, and then we take the back of our Mora companion, that 90-degree spine, and begin creating shavings off that main piece of fat wood. We get the collected shavings together, and now all we have to do is take our Mora and our ferro, and we ignite the shavings that we've created, take that tapered end, and simply light our candle. And now we have a fat wood candle that will last several minutes that we can use with our shelter. With this method, obviously wouldn't want to recommend using it only as a last resort because of the smoke that comes off of that fat wood. We don't want to be breathing in that smoke, so what we can do is simply wrap around our head, find the upwind side of our emergency shelter, turn our head that way, and then simply open the gap of the blanket, the opposite side, to allow that smoke to escape while getting that warmth and that radiant heat from the fat wood itself. It's a method. And with our emergency shelter, using that fat wood as a candle, we can still increase the heat inside. We got up to nearly 80 degrees in about 30 minutes underneath that shelter with that fat wood candle. Now with our casualty blanket, similar to a grabber space blanket, thermal blanket, or mylar blanket, we can take tape, black tape like this, and make 3 X's or 1 large X on the mylar side. Because we have a green side on the opposite side, it wouldn't help us for a signal, but we can put X's up on this mylar side to create a signal as part of our 5-piece kit to alert search and rescue from ground to air that we are in a survival scenario and require help. 3 X's or 1 large X is the signal for distress in a survival situation. And so now we have an emergency signal as part of our 5-piece kit, improvising and preparing before we go to the field. Now, one thing to mention here, by lifting a corner, we actually turn this 2-dimensional signal into a 3D signal for search and rescue to see. We lift this corner to help that mylar reflect off the sun's rays, brightening our signal with the 3 X's that we have here, as well as creating a shadow underneath of our shelter blanket here, our casualty blanket. That shadow underneath our emergency signal now will actually create more contrast for aerial units to see, stand out from our surroundings a lot more than it would if it was just flat on the ground. So lift a corner, create a 3-dimensional signal, that color, contrast, and movement, and we have an improvised signal that aerial units can see. When we collect fire material, especially in this area, a lot of the material dead standing, as well as the stuff that's going to be on the ground. While it may be dry, it has been exposed to moisture over seasons, so we need to be cognizant of the type of material and how we select our firewood for a survival fire in this area especially. We're going to use dead dry grass for our tinder, dead dry standing twigs and smalls for our kindling, and then we got larger section material that we can use for our fuel sources. We have all of our materials ready to go in a safe area, prepared with all of our resources standing by, so we can execute whatever task we need that fire for, in this case boiling water and making medicine. Now, fire is that skill for survival that is one of the most important. It does everything for us. Fire will keep us warm, cook our food, purify our water, make it safe to drink. It will provide a signal for search and rescue. It will help improve our shelter. We can make tools with fire. We can also make medicines with fire as long as we have a container to use. And we can also use this fire as a psychological aid and boost at nighttime to keep the boogeyman away. Boiling our water is the surefire way to make sure it is safe to drink. We want to boil that water to a rolling boil, and once it reaches that temperature, 212 degrees at a rolling boil, we can either leave it on for a minute, which some people like to do, or we can remove it from the fire and let it cool. Once it is cool, we can start taking a drink and even place it in our canteen, fill up our canteen with enough water to continue travels onto our next campsite or onto the next objective. Now, one of our 7 priorities of survival in any situation is medical aid. It's going to be one of the first things we do to treat any major injuries to ourselves, stop bleeding, treat a fracture, anything to save life, limb, or eyesight at that point in time of injury. However, in a prolonged survival situation, we can use materials from the landscape to create medicines to help treat minor injuries in the field. One thing we can use this time of year that are plentiful in this area and still found on the ground because there hasn't been much snow and hasn't been much rainfall are black walnuts. Black walnut contains medicinal properties that are going to benefit us in a survival situation. Black walnut contains iodine in the husks surrounding the nut of the fruit of the black walnut tree. Now, the iodine is going to be more potent with fresh fruit that falls from the tree at fall time. They're green and it's going to have more iodine and greater properties. But we can still take the old black walnuts that we find on the forest floor, like these, and still get enough material to create what's called an iodine wash. We take that black walnut, crush them up, and then remove the nuts from the dry husk. We take those dry husks and add them to our canteen cup with our hot water. We can add more water and actually place the cup over the fire, bring that mixture to a boil, and then let simmer for a little while. Once it's done simmering, we can remove it from the fire, let it cool, and collect the material inside, which is going to be our iodine wash. Now, once our liquid has cooled off, what we can do is find just a piece of trash laying around like a plastic bottle and use this as a container to transport our medicine. Otherwise, we'd just be using it here and then we'd have to dump it. Now, we collect as much as we can. We can toss the husks because we no longer need them. But what we're left with is a topical treatment for injuries, superficial injuries out in the field that we can use to help prevent infection and treat those wounds. Now with our black iodine wash, it's very simple to use. We can just dab a little bit on minor injuries or lacerations, scrapes or abrasions, maybe even burns that we have to our skin, and then save the rest of that iodine wash for later. We're going to get a lot of different cuts and abrasions as part of a survival scenario, so having a way to prevent infection and maintain some sense of hygiene and medical fitness out in the field will benefit us in a survival situation. With our 5-piece minimalist kit, it's too easy to simply pack these things up and carry them in our hands or place them in our pockets, but we can create an improvised fanny pack or backpack or sling bag, which is a simple piece of cloth like our shamag. We can take our shamag, lay it out flat on the ground, grab all of our kit items, the ones that we're going to need to carry anyway, start at one corner and simply stack and wrap. And we wrap all the way up, creating a simple fanny pack. We pick up that fanny pack and tie it around our waist and carry our items through the forest. It would be easy enough to simply carry a lot of these items, but it makes it a lot easier to have some sort of backpack or carrying device so we have our hands free to use in the forest to either navigate or pick up other resources along our way to safety. Alright guys, that does it for this video. I hope you liked this video, a very down and dirty video on a 5-piece minimalist kit. This environment is definitely a lot different than a couple weeks ago up in the tundra in the snow, but we've got some skills and demonstrated some improvisational techniques out in the field. So I hope you liked this video. If you did like this video, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, leave me a comment in the comment section. I always appreciate your feedback. I want to thank you guys for everything you do for me, for this channel, for your likes, your views, your subscriptions, your comments, your feedback, and your shares. And I'll be back with another video as soon as I can, guys. Thanks.